Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, March the 23rd, 2021. It is currently 10:21 a.m. Central Time. And once again, I'm here at Victory Baptist Church, located in Ovalo, Texas. I'm sitting here in the sanctuary. And full disclosure here, full disclosure. I am currently wearing a gray pair of shoes, right? They just look like your kind of typical, I don't know what you call them, sneakers, tennis shoes. I don't know what you want to call them. I got these shoes at a store in Boston when I was there visiting my daughter. What year was that? 2019, 2018? I went to Boston. We went to Salem, to the Salem Witch Museum. We did some things there, and while we were in downtown Boston, went to a store. In fact, the pants that I'm wearing, I think were purchased at that store with the shoes. These things are old. I think they only cost maybe $40, maybe $50. I mean, they're cheap little things. I mean, they don't look very good. They're gray, and they go with the gray pants that I'm wearing, so that's good. And then the shirt that I'm wearing is probably 7 years old, and it looks rough. I'm in my audio podcasting clothing. That's what I'm in. I probably wouldn't wear this anywhere else, but since I'm in an empty building, this is what I wear. I wear these shoes all the time. I wear them to church a lot. So, when I dress up nicer for church, I have a pair of black shoes that I think I got like at Payless for $40, and they're probably 5 years old. So that's what I wear. Now I could tell you all of that, and I could tell you all of that as some kind of sign, some kind of badge of honor. Like, look at me. Look at the poor pastor in the broken down church in the middle of nowhere, Texas. See how godly I am. See how holy I am. See, I have no problems with greed. I am the godly one. I am the one that you should look to on advice when talking about churches and money, because I'm the example. I could do that, but that would not necessarily be accurate, because I think when we talk about pastors, money, and greed, that we have a lot of questions we have to ask ourselves, and we got to think about it carefully. But let's remind ourselves let's give ourselves a scriptural foundation for the conversation we're going to have, because we're going to talk about pastors and them wearing $5,000 sneakers, shoes that cost $5,000. Is that ever acceptable, or is that wrong? They wear $5,000 sneakers. I'm here wearing a pair of probably $40 shoes that are, I think, 2018, bought in Boston, that if you looked at them, people would laugh at me. People would probably be embarrassed that I'm watching them. Does that make me more godly than them? Am I more spiritual than them? Do I pat myself on the back and go, look at me, look at me, look at me? Do I go out, if I went outside right now and showed you the picture of the car I drive, a silver grayish Toyota Corolla that I don't even know how many years old, well over 100,000 miles on it, missing 2 hubcaps, they're gone. I need to buy some wheel covers for them. And if I was to take a picture of the back seat's been basically destroyed because of children. Yeah, I mean, we've even had it clean. It's messed up. The car looks like, it looks bad. Does that make me more godly? They're wearing 5,000 sneakers. Do I look more godly? But let's get the scriptural foundation here. All right, 1 Timothy 3. Is the passage everyone runs to say, these are the qualifications of a pastor. These are the qualifications of a pastor. And a lot of things pastors get removed from the pulpit from and are told that they're disqualified forever are not even really specifically outlined here. But there is one that is specifically outlined, right? And that is this, 1 Timothy chapter 3, not given to wine, no striker, not greedy, not covetous, not greedy, and I'll read it exactly, not greedy of filthy lucre, not covetous. So a pastor should not be coveting and should not be greedy for filthy lucre. We should not be greedy for money. We should not be covetous of things. We're not. And that would be the qualifications of a pastor. So greed and coveting would disqualify you from ministry. But I've rarely seen a minister disqualified or removed. And when I say disqualified, I believe that you can be disqualified for a period of time, but that doesn't mean the person cannot be restored. Everyone's just like, disqualified, you're done forever. Is there not a chance for restoration? But the thing is, you've never seen, I rarely, maybe you know of a case, I've yet to see a pastor brought up before the church and saying, hey, you are now being removed from ministry because you are greedy for filthy lucre and you're covetous. You're done. You're done. You're done. You're finished, because the Bible clearly states that. For some reason, greed and covetousness doesn't get the headlines. But if there's a sexual sin, the end, shoot them 12 times. It's just interesting the way that works. But okay, when does a pastor cross the line and that they've entered into the world of greed and covetousness? These are very hard in many cases to try to really lock down. But that's the biblical standard. No greed. You don't do ministry for money. You're not in it for money. And you're not to be covetous. So what do we do with a report from the Washington Post? The Washington Post. This made it onto the Drudge Report. In the religion section of the Washington Post, preachers and their $5,000 sneakers. Why one man started an Instagram account showing churches' wealth. All right, so now we got someone out there who started an Instagram account, and he's taking photographs of preachers showing their wealth. Now, if you don't remember, if you go back into the archives, we did a big story about John Mcarthur owning 3 homes, and I think all 3 homes are worth over $1 million, if I remember correctly. I believe all 3 homes are worth over $1 million. We talked about the salary he was getting from Grace to You, which is just mind-boggling, because that's his radio ministry / podcast, which is just a 30-minute program where they take his sermons, they edit them up and air them. I don't know why he's getting paid an additional salary. I think he's getting 3 different salaries. He's worth, I don't even know how many millions of dollars. And we look at all of that and we ask the question, how much can a pastor make? How much is too much? When does it cross the line? When do you say that's not biblical? That's not right. The Bible doesn't give a dollar amount. The Bible doesn't give a dollar amount, but I doubt very few people attending, well, put it this way, the average Christian attending the average church doesn't own 3 homes worth over $1 million. Most of us do not have that. I don't have the ability to buy a $5,000 pair of shoes. I don't have the ability, but does that make me more godly? See, I started with pointing to what I don't have, to try to show you that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm more spiritual, that I'm more godly. That's so easy to fall into that trap. But we do have to raise some serious questions here. So let's consider the article. Okay, here it is. This was published March the 22nd at 6 a.m. So it was published yesterday, and it appeared on the Drudge Report. That's where I saw it and was like, oh, save that into my notes because we need to talk about this. All right. They have a picture here of Kanye West sporting Yeezy shoes during a meeting with President Donald Trump in the Oval Office, and they have a picture here of the shoes. All right, you have a picture here of the shoes. Now, from his couch in Dallas, Ben Kirby began asking questions about the lifestyles of the rich and famous pastors when he was watching some worship songs on YouTube on Sunday morning in 2019. While listening to a song by Elevation Worship, a megachurch based in Charlotte, the evangelical churchgoer noticed the lead singer's Yeezy sneakers were worth nearly the amount of his first rent check. Kirby posted to his 400 followers on Instagram, "Hey, Elevation Worship, how much you paying your musicians that can afford $800 kicks? Let me get on the payroll." All right, now, is that wrong? Is that wrong? Is it wrong for him to post that picture and ask that question? Is it wrong? Is it wrong for someone in the worship group to be, and now they may be paying their musicians. I know dogmatically, I can say this for certainty. There's a church that I drive past every time I drive to the church and drive back home from this church. I drive past it. There's a church there where the person I worked with in the military, he played drums for Aaron Watson, a very popular country singer in this part of the country. You probably have heard him. He's had some national exposure. He's all of our television, local commercials always have him. But he played drums for that band. He was even in one of the music videos for that band. He loved music, so we would talk all about music and talk about being a drummer for someone who was up and coming in the country industry. Even though he really wasn't a country person, he loved playing drums. So we talked about it, and he talked about how he got paid, I can't remember, it was a couple of $100 every Sunday for playing drums in the praise and worship band at this church. And here's the kicker, okay? This is just insane. He was an atheist. So he was being paid hundreds of dollars to play in the praise and worship band at a big church here in the local area. And he was an atheist. What? Yeah. But so I do know that some churches pay their musicians to be in their big praise and worship bands. And the reason they do so is because a lot of people judge a church by the quality of the music. Oh, I really love the music. Well, I bet you do. They're paying people hundreds of dollars to play their music and spending all the money to buy their instruments. And, and they're not really worried about their theological beliefs or even if they're a Christian. But hey, I guess that's the way it works in some churches. So I think it's perfectly fine to ask the question, how much are churches paying their musicians? Does anyone know? I don't know. I would have never even known that was a thing until I found that out. And I was like, what? They pay you to play drums in their praise and worship band? And you're an atheist? Like that? Who got kicked out of the military for drug use? Okay. But that's a whole different story. That's my first exposure to all. I would have never even known it. So he raises the question. Plus, Kirby wondered how could the church's pastor, Stephen Furtick, one of the most popular preachers in the country, afford a new designer outfit nearly every week. Now, Stephen Furtick is one of the most popular pastors in America. If you go to any podcasting chart, and look up the religion chart, Stephen Furtick is going to be number 1, number 2, or number 3. Almost without fail. He's going to be in the top 3. Stephen Furtick's podcast brings in massive amounts of downloads. Look at the number of 5-star ratings and all of the reviews for Stephen Furtick. I would have to pay people money. In fact, I tried to pay people to post reviews. I tried to give away books to people who would do it. I'll do anything just for us to get a review. But Stephen Furtick, man, boom, he's knocking those out. And yes, every time he preaches, looks like he has a new outfit every single week. If you watch the video podcast, every single week he seems to have a new outfit. Is that wrong or is that right? Is that wrong or is that right? Should we go back to pastors wearing, basically like a robe? Should we go back to that? And then you don't have to worry about what the pastor's wearing. The pastor doesn't have to worry about what he's wearing. Is that wrong? Is it wrong that the pastor can afford basically a designer outfit every week? That image may be very important for the growth of that church and for the popularity of that church. So the church may be perfectly okay with that. All right. With a friend's encouragement, Kirby started a new Instagram account. With a friend's encouragement, Kirby started a new Instagram account called @Preachers in Sneakers. Preachers. Okay, so I'll try to. I don't have Instagram, but if you have Instagram, if you want to look up the Instagram account, then by all means look it up, follow it. You can see if you think this is right or if it's wrong. So it's @Preachers. The P in Preachers is capitalized. Then at the end of Preachers, N, the letter N as in Nancy, is capitalized. S in Sneakers is capitalized. So it's Preachers with a capital P, capital N, Sneakers with a capital S, all run together. Preachers, capital P, N, the letter N, standing alone, Nancy, okay, and then sneakers with a capital S, all run together, preachers and sneakers. Posting screenshots of pastors next to price tags and the street value of the shoes they are wearing. Within a month, the account had attracted 100,000 followers. Now, I'm going to stop here. I got to be a little cynical here. I do not know how Instagram works. If you have 100,000 followers, is the person posting this, is he having a way to turn that into profit for himself? So if he's condemning other people for their wealth and he's found a way to now take a Instagram account that he's utilizing to expose other people's wealth into an opportunity for him to make money, I'm going to at least bring out that possibility. I don't know how Instagram works. I don't know if he's the way to monetize that. I know if you have a podcast with 100,000 followers and you're getting a pretty consistent, steady, like those 100,000 are pretty much listening to everything you post, you can monetize your podcast and you could be bringing in some serious money. I think a YouTube channel with 100,000 followers where people are watching everything you post could bring in a little bit of money. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be rich. I'm saying that you could probably bring in a steady income that way. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to monetize that since I've never been on Instagram. Here we go. At the beginning, it was easy for me to make jokes about it, he said. Some of the outfits are absurd, so it's easy to laugh at some of the designer pieces. The price tags are outlandish. On his feed, Kirby has showcased Seattle pastor Judah Smith's $3,600 Gucci jacket, Dallas pastor T.D. Jakes' $1,250, and I don't know how to pronounce this brand, fanny pack. He has a fanny pack that cost over $1,000. Miami pastor has a $2,541 crocodile belt. He considers Paula White, former President Donald Trump's most trusted pastoral advisor, who is often photographed in designer items at Preachers and Sneakers content Goldmine, posting a photo of her wearing a $785 sneakers. All right. And then they show her there. There's a picture of her on there, and they show the shoes, and that the shoes cost $785. Wow. Okay. That's crazy. As the Instagram account grew, Kirby started asking more serious questions about wealth, class, and consumerism, including whether it's appropriate to generate massive revenue from selling the gospel of Jesus. Now, here's someone who started asking these questions. Is it right to generate massive revenue from selling the gospel of Jesus? Is it right to generate massive revenue from selling the gospel of Jesus? This is the question every Christian should ask. And I will start, before we start worrying about sneakers, before we start worrying about jackets or crocodile belt or all the other things, a fanny pack, before we start. Now, that may be a good way to get the conversation generated, but I've been raising the question about people making all kinds of money for selling the gospel for a very long time, and nobody will listen to me. Let me say it again. When your favorite celebrity pastor is at some huge conference where people have to pay $100, $200, $300, $400, $500 to get into a conference where they're going to hear people preach the gospel, they have now turned the gospel, or they're going to preach the word of God. They've now turned the preaching of God's word into a product which is sold, and people line up and they go. And if you criticize them, they get ticked off at you. I cannot tell you the number of emails I receive anytime I criticize what I call the conference industrial complex, which is just to me so wrong. You pay money to walk into a conference. When I saw Dr. James White preach at a small conference in the Dallas, Texas area. And I'll just never forget. I think it only cost us like $60, $70 to get in. It was me, and I took one of the men from the church. I think he was a teenager at the time. We went, and the preaching was good, yes. The singing was good, yes. But it was inside a church. So we paid money to get inside a church to hear the word of God preached. And it hit me. I've always had problems with it, but it just really hit me. What is going on? And it's hit me before. The big church not far from my house, they've held a lot of Christian concerts. And I've only been there maybe twice for Christian concerts, but I remember standing outside in a line to get into a church for a concert that I had to pay $20, $30, whatever it was, to get inside a church for a concert. And then the bands want to claim that they're doing ministry. That's not, you don't charge for ministry. You preach the word of God. Now, I got no problem if you want to take up an offering that people can freely give, but they freely can hear the gospel preached or freely hear you minister to them in music. But the Christianity has created such an industry that it's just, there's no way around it. It's like every Christian leader has product to sell. They have merch to sell. I'm using wrestling terminology, but in wrestling terminology, I think podcasters use it as well, but I just know it from wrestling terminology. If you go to an indie show, an indie wrestling show, I know you may not care about wrestling. Usually there'll be an intermission, and then the wrestlers will come out and they'll stand kind of next to the ring, and they'll have a suitcase, and they have their shirts that they've made. And they'll tell you, hey, please support the wrestlers by buying their merch. And you go up, you meet the wrestler, and you can buy a shirt, $10, $15, $20, whatever the case may be, and help supports them because these wrestlers make very little money on the indie circuit. They may get $200, $300 for an appearance. Basically nothing. They got to sell that merch. And so that's a good way. So you get to meet a lot of wrestlers who then later on become big stars, say in the WWE, and then you can say, oh, I remember watching them wrestle, got to meet them when we were watching them wrestle in that high school gym with 10 people. So, but they always say, push the merch, got to sell the merch, got to sell. I think Christianity is the same racket, but these famous pastors, they end up with their merchandise. Go to any Christian bookstore and you see their merchandise. And what so much of what they have there really is nothing more than their sermons, then broken down into different ways of them being placed out there. And a Bible study guide, which is really, they take some questions from their sermons and put them in a Bible study guide, or in a commentary, which is someone taking the sermon and editing them down. In many cases, the pastors don't even edit them. They get a team of editors who edit them down. It's just taking the sermon and editing it down into a commentary format, and then they sell it. Where those pastors could obviously take the notes from their sermons, break them down into a commentary set, and then put them online for free in a PDF file. But no. I mean, I've got some right here. Got Mcarthur's commentary on Romans. Now, yes, are these books very beneficial and helpful as a pastor? Yes, they can be very beneficial or helpful. And for you as a Bible student. But guess what? It becomes merch. See? It's got Mcarthur's name on it. Now, I don't even know if he edited this. I don't know if he edited the commentaries. I don't know. But these are basically, if you go listen to his sermons, the sermons basically become the commentaries. Now, maybe he wrote them. I don't know. But I'm saying that's how it gets played out. And then all of this merchandise they'll put Mcarthur's name on anything, and you can sell it. Put Rick Warren's name on anything. You can sell it. And so they have their merchandise. So at what point does it become problematic that the teaching of God's word becomes the product that is sold? And I'm done with the Christian conference racket. I don't know how Christians continue to fall for it, but you cannot ever criticize. Trust me. You get on social media. You want next time, let's say the Shepherds Conference is going on, or G3 conference. Just name one of these big conferences and look at their social media account, and you start posting criticism about basically how much money. You take a screenshot of the registration screen and how much it paid, and like, you should not be charging people to hear God's word. You look at the response that will come after you. They will come after you. Everyone will come after you. You will become public enemy number one. You are the apostate. You are the sinner. You are the heathen, not them. You can't even raise the question. And it's a problem in the American church. I've got it queued up. I'm not going to play it, but if you listen to our reviews on the Sermon on the Mount, the last two, we've been reviewing sermons from Charles Swindoll. And at the end of their radio program, they do the same. They try to sell some commentaries by Swindoll, right? And then they tell you that the purchase of those commentaries doesn't go to support that radio ministry. No. So where does the money go? We have no clue. Someone's getting it. Someone's getting paid. But then they tell you the only way this radio program is possible is by your support. Now, wait a minute. You're saying Charles Swindoll's ministry, his church, cannot support his radio ministry? What is that? Or you'll hear a Christian podcast saying the only way this podcast is made available is by your gift. Well, wait, why isn't your church supporting the podcast? Why? There's so many questions, and every radio ministry asks for money, and then the radio station asks for money. Right now, all the Christian radio stations are going, depending on which week it is, they're all doing they're raising money for the year. They're doing their telethons, whatever they're called. And they spend 3 days asking for money, and they'll raise all kinds of money. So the radio station needs money, then each ministry needs money, but everybody needs money. Everybody's raising money. And you're like, all of this is money for the preaching of the gospel. And you're like, well, why aren't those radio stations owned by local churches? And then the church support the radios. The whole system is broken. So now we have an Instagram account going, I think something's wrong. Let's continue through this. So the person on this, he begins to raise some questions. I'm going to read this to you again. He began to ask serious questions about wealth, class, consumerism, including whether it's appropriate to generate massive revenue from selling the gospel of Jesus. I began asking how much is too much, Kirby asked. Okay, he said. It's really a question, but how much is too much? How much is too much? How much is too much? I don't have the easy answer for you. I don't. Owning 3 homes worth over $1 million, is that too much? Being worth $2 million, $3 million, $4 million? I'm not going to get into this controversy, but there was a famous pastor having some serious health issues. He was in another country. They were trying to get him back to the United States, and a GoFundMe page was set up, and he raised, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million to help him with his medical expenses. But then I did just a quick Google search using the pastor, and I found out that pastor is worth millions of dollars. So I was like, why is a pastor who's worth millions has a GoFundMe page where they're raising millions to cover his medical expense? What about the pastor, the no-name pastor in the middle of nowhere who has medical expenses, or his family has medical expenses? Who's raising money for them? The pastor's worth millions. He doesn't have medical insurance. He's worth millions of dollars and no medical insurance. His church doesn't provide. I'm just dumbfounded by it. But it didn't matter. People just like, give money. And it's like, I'm not saying that it was wrong for people to give money. I'm just saying that it just seemed weird that the pastor is worth millions of dollars. I began asking how much is too much. Is it okay to get rich off the preaching about Jesus? Is it okay to be making twice as much as the median income of your congregation? The Washington Post tried to contact several pastors featured on the Instagram account for comment, including Carl Lentz, Paula White, and T.D. Jakes, but none of them replied. You got to love that. They never reply to tough questions. Look, you try contacting some of these big churches and see if you can get a reply. It's crazy. About trying to get in touch with them, trying to get a reply from any of them. Ask them a doctrinal theological question. One of the members of my church for school, they had to write a paper dealing with the doctrine of the Trinity. So they started contacting some of the big churches in the local area to try to talk to the pastors to get them a question and to ask them a question about the doctrine of the Trinity. They tried email and they never got a reply. Never got a reply. It was a Catholic church that replied. It's a Catholic priest who replied. That the Protestant pastors in big churches didn't have time. Priest from a big Catholic church responded and gave an absolutely perfect definition of the doctrine of the Trinity, a perfect biblical explanation of the doctrine of the Trinity. The Protestant pastors weren't bothered. They couldn't be bothered to answer someone's questions about the doctrine of the Trinity. Now, what I wanted to do was to contact those same pastors at those same email addresses and say that we want to give them a gift of $50,000 or $10,000 and see how quick they responded. Now, that would have been wrong because it would have been disingenuous, but I wanted to do it so bad. Like, you can't respond to someone in my church when they're trying to ask you questions about the doctrine of the Trinity, but you had no problem responding when I offered you some money. I've seen how some of the big churches, when I've tried to contact them about something they preach and going, man, that's a major problem. No, I'm a nobody. They don't even respond. But I've always received email responses from the Catholic priest. I've always, when I was a student at a Catholic university working on a Catholic degree in Catholic theology, in many cases I had to contact local pastors to ask questions or do different things for some assignments. They always responded. Always responded. And it's just that's my experience. But the big pastors, no, they can't. So I'm not shocked that you reached out to them and the Washington Post and they didn't bother to respond to you. To be honest, I'm not even surprised there. I'm not surprised at all. For the past 2 years, Kirby has posted and podcasted without sharing his real name. Now, please note, he's turned it into a podcast. I bet you his podcast is monetized. So we got to be fair here. We got to be fair. He's pointing out all of their wealth, but I bet you he's now turned it into a situation for him to make a little bit of money. I bet you he has. I would have to chase down his podcast, but 99% of podcasts are monetized. All right. Well, I can't say 99%. That would not be accurate. Most podcasters attempt to get their podcast monetized. Let's go with it. Let's state it that way, right? Let's say that's probably true that 99% of podcasters try to get their podcast monetized, all right? I'm always contacted by Spreaker. Do you want to monetize your podcast? Do you want to monetize? I'm like, no, I don't want to monetize my podcast. It's a theology podcast. Why would I want to monetize the preaching and teaching of God's word? Now, if I wanted to stay committed to my currently on podcast that made it, that did so well on the charts, I could probably keep working and get that monetized. But I don't know if I want to do that. That takes too much of my time. So, but okay, I just think it's interesting that now he's podcasting about it. But recently he decided to share his real identity with the Post with the release of his new book. Okay, now he's written a book. Okay. Preachers and Sneakers, Authenticity in the Age of For-Profit Faith and Wannabe Celebrities. Please note, in the age of for-profit faith. For-profit faith while claiming to be nonprofit and getting, guess what? Tax exemption. Yeah, got to love the way that works. While taking millions of dollars from the federal government and PPP loans. Yeah, we could go all day on how the church handles money. But please note, so he started with an Instagram, then he moved to a podcast, now he's written a book. Clearly, he's going to make money off him exposing all of this questionable content going on within the church. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that while you're criticizing the money they're making, you found a way to make your criticism into a money-making endeavor as well. So, because guess what? We all whether we say we like money, we can say I don't love it, I just like it a lot. We can make those little jokes. The bottom line is we all like money because of what it can purchase and what it can buy and at least the human security that it can bring. So let's just all be honest with ourselves there. Kirby, who grew up in a Christian homeschooling family, holds a degree in marketing management and an MBA. He attends a non-denominational church and considers himself evangelical. he said, not as in Trump is the chosen one, but I believe in sharing my faith. It's just sad now that when you describe yourself as a Christian, you have to you describe yourself as a Christian in 2021 by either stating your support for Trump or your denial of Trump. Why is Trump even come up when you call yourself a Christian? Why? How did the church ever let that happen? That's a whole different podcast episode. But that stuff drives me absolutely crazy. That I'm a Christian, but I'm not. I don't support Trump. Or I'm a Christian, but I support Trump. It's like Trump has nothing to do with Christianity. Zero, none, nada, nothing. So can we just leave Trump out of the discussion of Christianity as much as possible? All right. When Kirby began showing pastors high fashion, he was putting dollar signs on designer items for everyone to see just how expensive the clothing items were valued. A journalist who writes about ethically sourced fashion and first wrote about the Instagram account. All right. So he says how this person first started what they were doing. And then, all right. He is someone who gets Christianity enough and gets fashion enough, but also has a really critical eye. He is not a known professional in either space. So he was willing to say things that people in those spaces weren't. That is that is not true. There's plenty of us willing to say these things. The only problem is nobody wants to hear what we have to say, and we get kicked off Christian radio. There's been plenty of us saying this stuff. So, hey, this guy, see, since he's not really he's not a pastor, and he's not really into the fashion industry, he can raise these questions that nobody else was willing to raise. That's not accurate. Plenty of us within the Christian world have raised these questions and yelled and screamed about it, and nobody cared to listen. All right. Says Kirby's father is a family practice doctor, so he grew up in what he describes as a comfortable but modest lifestyle. I would think a family practice doctor would probably have more than a modest lifestyle. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe family practice doctors don't make as much as I thought they did. Where his parents gave generously to their church. He remembers feeling confused when he saw his pastor, Charles, driving a royal blue Harley-Davidson cruiser worth more than 1 year of his parents' tithes. That's when he said he realized there was a somewhat fuzzy line between successful ministry and booming business. Now, would it be wrong? I don't know how much a royal blue Harley-Davidson cruiser costs. I don't know. Is it wrong for a pastor to have one of those? See, this raises some uncomfortable questions that we all need to talk about. In the new book, Kirby highlights a nationwide trend of pastors wearing oversized glasses, tight jeans, and pricey kicks who look like they belong at your local craft cocktail watering hole instead of church. Gone are the days of choir and suited up pastor and random people sitting in velvet chairs on stage. No, Kirby writes, now it's a U2 incarnate worship band, perfectly placed LED wash lights, and a pastor motivating edgy and might even let a cuss word slip if you're lucky. From suits to denim, many pastors of all kinds of denominations have shifted in their dress in recent years. So now we're going to get into a discussion about what they used to wear. He says he watched a generation of young black male youth pastors begin trying to reach a hip-hop generation by wearing jeans and Jordans. Again, I don't know what do you wear? Why do what you wear determine how you reach the generation? I think maybe we should just go back to like the Catholic perspective that you just wear a pair of black pants, black shirt. Yes, they wear the collar, right? And that's it. And then for preaching, you wear the vestments. And then you're just done. You don't have to get, maybe that's where we need to go. Maybe that's where we need to go. I don't know. But it's like, hey, I'm going to reach young people by wearing, I'm going to wear some Jordans and jeans. And then the young people will say, ooh, he's one of us. I just think that's so, that treats kids, that to me treats young people like they're idiots. I hate that mentality. You got to be the youth pastor. You got to talk and dress like them. Why not just be who you are to them and preach the gospel. You don't try to be something you're not. You're trying to hey, I'm going to, I don't get that whole thing. I don't get that whole thing. He goes, first it was a theological statement. Now it's a statement of status. Thomas, who has been a minister in places with lower income populations, says he buys most of his clothes from places that set an example to his followers that they don't have to go into debt to impress people. They're making deliberate choices with the Da Vinci and Prada. Thomas said, it seems like they're choosing to do ministry to people who can afford shoes like that. In his book, Kirby writes that these pastors who have enormous social media followings aren't simply pastors anymore. They are motivational speakers, corporate coaches, and leadership consultants. Kirby said he has heard of churches where a volunteer was designated solely for the purpose of carrying the pastor's Bible. That's insane. I need a volunteer just to carry my books from. If you've ever seen how many books I carry to church on a Sunday, yeah. Often he writes, these pastors have private entrances, reserved parking spaces, security details, and a gaggle of personal assistants or handlers. And often they promise blessings from God to their followers if their followers bless the church. Like Hollywood, a world so often criticized, these institutions and their leaders celebrate and reward the blessings of fame, popularity, and influence. Pastors function like a talent performing for an audience or like a spokesman for the church's brand. All right, and then they go through. This article is long. So I'm not going to read the rest of it. And they give some more examples. But let's do a couple of things here to try to summarize everything. So the Instagram account is Preachers in Sneakers. I gave you that. The podcast, where's his podcast? His podcast, if you here's an easy way. If you go to preachersandsneakers.com, preachersandsneakers.com, they have a website, preachersandsneakers.com, and you can subscribe to the podcast there. You know what this means? We definitely need to review some of these podcast episodes. So here's what I need. For the listeners of the Theology Central podcast, please go look up Preachers in Sneakers. Now, this is just all lowercase. Preachers in, the letter N, not I-N, just the letter N, sneakers.com. preachersandsneakers.com. Subscribe to the podcast, and then you tell me which episode I need to review. You tell me which episode that I should play on the air, and we will do so. preachersandsneakers.com. Go there. And how many episodes does he got here? Wow. He's got a lot of episodes. So what we would probably do is start with the first one, okay? So yeah, they're putting out some content here. And then, let's see here. He has a book. The book is called Preachers in Sneakers, Authenticity in an Age of For-Profit Faith and Wannabe Celebrities. What I'm going to try to do is see, I'm going to find out. I'm going to look right now. Give me 1 second. I'm going to copy. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go to Amazon. If it's available on Amazon, I will add it to our book club. Let's see if it's here. Give me 1 second. If it's available, I will get it added to our book club. Now remember, the book club, we don't get any money. You need to join the Theology Central book club. It's absolutely free. Go to theologycentral.net, go to the blog section. You may have to scroll down for a while. Find the article about our book club. There's a link. Join the book club, and then I will get this posted in the book club as soon as I can. So, Preachers in Sneakers, you got the podcast, you got the book. They're really going all in, asking these tough questions about how much is too much. Here's what I'm going to try to end with some summary. Here's what I would say. Number one, anytime the preaching of God's word becomes a product that is sold, that people have to pay to hear, pay to get into a building to hear it. When it becomes a product that is sold, Christians should stop supporting it, reject it, and we want that entire system to go away. We should just completely condemn it and stop. Look, if you want a conference then tell your pastor, and your pastor can do 5 days, 5 nights, 2 weeks of preaching every night, and you can go to church and hear it. But it's different. I want to hear that celebrity pastor. Well, the fact that you want to hear that celebrity pastor and you're willing to drop serious money to hear that celebrity pastor means you are contributing to the whole celebrity Christian culture. You're part of the problem. All right? And if you want pastors to have a conference and the pastors get together, hold a conference inside a church, and there's free to get in, and those churches that those pastors are pastors of, they fly the pastor there, pay for the pastor's hotel, and the pastor gets supported by his church to go minister. He's not out any money, but he's not there it's not his side hustle. It's not a side hustle. It's not the way it should be, right? So the preaching of God's word cannot become a product that is sold. Everyone should be on the same side on that. I know not nobody's on my side on that, but everyone should be on the same side. Number 2, churches are going to have to ask themselves at some point, how much is too much? I mean, we really have to come to that. Look, like right now, my church doesn't have to answer that question. But they never will have to answer that question because I offend so many people that we're never going to grow. Okay, so we're never going to grow, so they don't have to worry about it. But even if you're a small church, you never know when that small church is going to turn into a large church. And when it turns into a large church, how much is too much? Look, if you're a pastor of a church of 10,000 people, clearly you're going to make more money than I make. Clearly, and rightly so. Trying to pastor a church of 10,000 people, I can't even comprehend all of the responsibilities, all of the struggles, all of the stress, all of the difficulties, all the things you have to do. I can't even comprehend that. So clearly, there's going to be some compensation, and compensation for a pastor is, look, a lot of times in the world are like, I don't know why these pastors make any money. So how are they supposed to support their family? Right? Well, they should have another job. Okay, you be a bivocational pastor and see how well that works out. All right, trust me, as someone who was a bivocational pastor for a very long time, yeah, it didn't do good for my family. Didn't do good for me. It led to lots of problems. It was not a good thing. It was not a good thing. I felt godly that I wasn't taking any money from the church, and yes, the church couldn't have supported me anyway. But so pastors should be compensated. And obviously, the larger the church, the larger the compensation. But that's just the way it's going to work. But when does it cross a line? When does it cross the line? Should a pastor get paid for being a pastor and then have a radio/podcast and then make an additional, get paid for that additionally? In other words, like, You're John Mcarthur, you get paid from Grace Community Church, and then because you have Grace to You, which is basically just a podcast where his sermons are chopped up and aired on radio and basically in podcast platforms, he gets paid for that as well. Should he get a separate salary? Should I come to the members of Victory Baptist Church and go, hey, I'm your pastor, you make my house payment, but you know what? I'm also the person doing the Theology Central podcast, working hour after hour after hour after hour. I want to get paid for that too. Should I get 2 salaries? Now, I don't really get a salary. I just get my house payment made. But would that be right? To me, this is a part of me being a pastor. This is part of me doing my job as a pastor. I'm continuing to preach and teach and trying to equip. But churches are going to have to ask, when is too much too much? If your pastor is spending $5,000 on a pair of sneakers or $1,000 on a fanny pack or $3,000 for a jacket or $700 for a pair of shoes, when does that become too much? When does it become greed? So I think we'll do this. Number one, we have to completely condemn when the preaching of God's word becomes a product that is sold. Number 2, every church has to ask themselves, when is too much too much? And number 3, we all have to ask the question, when does it cross the line into turning into greed and doing ministry for filthy lucre? So when is too much, and when does it become basically disqualifying as a pastor, that you're going against the qualifications of a pastor. Now, everyone's different. Now, I want you to hear this. If some people of my church were to come to my house and to walk into my study and saw my 65-inch OLED 4K ultra high def television connected to an Apple television streaming device, connected to a stereo system that I was watching the 4-hour Snyder cut of Justice League the other day, and I had the volume up so loud that I think people 6 miles away, the people in my house were like, we can feel the whole house rumbling with every explosion. That. And then you look over, you see my Yamaha preamp CD player with connected to an iPad Pro for streaming services like Tidal and all of the streaming services, with a nice pair of headphones connected to all of that. Some people would say that's just outlandish. That is ridiculous. That is, and people could take a picture of that and post it on social media and say, see, pastor living off his church. Well, number one, now this is where you have to get fuller context. My church only pays for my house payment. So all of that's purchased was purchased from my military retirement and my disability. And I got that because I spent years only buying what I could afford. And then finally when I could, and only reason I was able to get that television, it was on sale at the base exchange where there's no tax on the things you purchase. So I was able to get it with no tax, and it was massively discounted at the base exchange on the Air Force Base here. That's the only reason I was able to get that television, or I wasn't able to get it. It's not even the television I wanted, but it was the one that I could afford. So I've always tried to purchase the things that I can get and save up and save up and save up. When I went to WrestleMania, my ticket was $325. I think it was $325. I've got the ticket stub. Some people would have said that's ridiculous. But the thing is, church didn't pay for any of that. Nobody giving money to the podcast is paying for any of that. Because that goes to the church and then goes to supporting the podcast. So, but does that show greed? See, that's the question I wanted. Does that show greed? Someone can make that shows greed and coveting. And I'm not going to sit here and act that I'm super spiritual, because I tell you all the time, I'm a sinner just like you. You know what? There's times I covet. I'm just going to be honest with you. If I go to the Yamaha website right now, Yamaha, they have some amplifiers that I have wanted for 15 years, right? There's a Yamaha amp I want so bad. Oh, I want it so bad. But I can't afford it. I can't. There was a piece of stereo system, the NAM Atom streaming thing. I was going to go trying to pay it off, $3,000 for it. It came in and it was broken. And so I sent it back. I got a refund. I was going to do another one, but I said, you know what? I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to spend the money. It was an irresponsible purchase in the first place, so I'm not going to do so. But I'm coveting for that. There are some things that I want that I can't afford. The pair of headphones that I have, super nice. I would love to get a better pair of headphones, but I can't. I sometimes covet for those things. I'm just going to be honest. I have a strong desire. Now, maybe you can say, well, maybe you're keeping it in check. I hope that I am. I've never tried to do anything to hurt my family financially and not to do anything there. I've always tried to make wise decisions there. But I can go. So when does it become greed? Like, I think greed can be there before, like, I don't have a desire to have 3 homes. I can tell you that. I have no desire to have 3 homes. I don't get that. I have no desire for a $5,000 pair of sneakers. I can tell you that. I don't have any desire for a $3,000 jacket or a $1,000 fanny pack. I wouldn't wear a fanny pack if you gave me one. I don't have a desire for. I don't wear a watch. I don't even wear a ring. I don't wear any jewelry. I don't like anything. So I don't have no desires for any of those things, but I have desire for other things. I don't have a desire for a Harley Davidson cruiser. I don't have a desire. Well, I do have a desire for somewhat of a nicer car. I do. I do. I mean, I'm in the car a lot. I would like to get a nicer car. Me and my wife talked about getting a new car, but we were just like, well, we don't want the car payment. We don't. So we're just going to try to keep this Toyota going until it blows up on the side of the road. That's because we don't want that. So my desires for those things are not as strong. So I can pat myself on the back and act like that I'm godly because I don't pursue those things, but I pursue my own things. Does that make sense? So whenever the gospel becomes a product to be sold, Christians should condemn it. How much is too much? Churches have to ask this question. They need some kind of, when is too much too much? Stephen Furtick, I mean, his church is huge. He's got the #1 podcast in America at times. I mean, his podcast brings in crazy amounts of downloads. I don't even know how many YouTube views his church gets. I mean, he is a rock star in many aspects. So obviously he's going to have nicer things than I'm going to have. Now, I would go after Stephen Furtick for his theology more than I would go after him for his dress. So is that too much? And then when does it become greed? When does it become greed for a pastor? But listen, when does it become greed for you? Greed is wrong for everyone. Covetousness is wrong for everyone, not just the pastor. But it is a pastoral qualification not to be doing ministry for filthy lucre, not to be greedy for filthy lucre. When does it cross that line? When does it cross that line? Now, if my church is small, let's say, and it's never going to happen, that all of a sudden we become a 500-person church and we have to get a new building, and the church wants to pay me more. How much more do I take? My needs are kind of, other than my house payment. I mean, like if the church let me get a new car and made the car payment, yeah, that would be great. But other than that, do I need anything? Oh yeah, we could do some things to fix up our house. We've got some minor repairs we could do there. Like, I'm saying, but like then when do I, like if my needs are being met, should the church give you more than your needs? Like, these are difficult questions, and I think it's easy to condemn, but I don't know if the scriptures give us specific guidelines on how to work this. Now, people will go, well, Jesus, the Son of Man had no place to lay his head. Okay, well, all right, so then all pastors should be homeless? Pastors have families. Their kids, the pastor's kids want things. The pastor's kids want clothes. The pastor's kids want a new phone. The pastor's wife wants things. So how do you work all of that in a way that's fair, but at the same time protects the pastor from being to me, here's what I think happens. When everyone loves the pastor, no one's going to raise any question about greed or covetousness. The minute they don't like the pastor, then they will accuse them of greed and covetousness. That's one of the things that when I had my first little kind of controversy, when I ticked off some people in my church, it didn't take long. That's when I immediately said, no, I'm not taking another dime from this church. I'm not taking another dime. I'm not taking another dime, because I was not going to allow them to make any accusation about money. So I just removed money from it. There were some people mad at me. I said, I'm not taking another dime. I gave up not taking money. Nobody can make that accusation. Oh, they still got mad at me and they still left. Okay, so there's nothing I could do. But I guess what? They couldn't leave saying that I was in it for the money. So because I know people will turn on a pastor really quick and start throwing money into their face. So sometimes it's best not to do that. And look, there are a lot of people who hate Stephen Furtick. They'll use this whole news story in the Washington Post as a way to attack him, or to Paula White, or any of the other people mentioned, T.D. Jakes. They'll use it. And I'm just like, you got to be careful using money as a weapon against them, because it can be turned against pretty much any pastor as soon as people don't like them. So you can draw you can tell me what you think about the whole story. When is too much too much? Again, I think the three principles I just want to make sure I leave you with. When we turn the preaching of the gospel into a product, that's where we've got to start drawing some clear lines. A product to be sold, that's a problem. Number two, how much is too much? Churches have to really establish a pay scale Hey, we cannot go beyond this. And I know it seems like a ridiculous thing to say, but many churches need to get together and say, we can never pay more than this, or at least depending on the economy. Obviously, things change. But, like, do you base it off the medium income of all the people? Like, here's the average income of the people, so the pastor can only make the average income of the people there. Is that what you do? Or he can make 10% more than the average income? How does that work? And are you saying, hey, like, the church has got to come up with some clear guidelines. And then number 3, when does it become greed? When does your pastor have crossed the line and now he's demonstrating that he's in it for filthy lucre and he's covetous? When does that happen? Those are questions that we should ask, and we should use the Washington Post to face these difficult subjects and look at ourselves. Because churches, man, I'm telling you, many of them run like a business, and they make that money. They make that money. All is tax exempt. The whole thing, and many times, is questionable from an ethical standpoint. And I think we need to do a hard look at ourselves. All right, I'll stop right there. You can email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. And once again, we went an hour. I cannot do an episode less than an hour. I don't know what's wrong with me. I know some of you hate my long podcast episodes. I know you do. I get the emails. I would listen to you if you did shorter ones, but I've got to try. I don't know what to say. All right. You get what you pay for. Oh, yeah, you don't have to pay for this. So just hey, you don't get commercials either. So you should be grateful for all of that, okay? Maybe. I don't know. All right, everyone have a great day. God bless.